Hello and welcome to another Imperator Invictus Dev Diary video. Imperator Invictus, if anyone is unaware at this point, I don't think there are many people who are unaware, is the mod that attempts to bring flavour and a bit of love and care to the game that Paradox has forgotten exists. I know I make that joke every single time, but whatever. Might continue. It's probably going to continue. I'm probably going to do it again. Whatever. Let's get into this Dev Diary. It's all about Germania. There was no image to go along with the Dev Diary teaser from yesterday. What we had instead was, well, I'll just load it up for you. We had this instead. I would have had a teaser for you guys today, but I lost it. Just how my 3 legions got lost in some forests. Quintilivare legiones rede, which is, fucks me legions, Varus, basically. Something along those lines. So yeah, it's pretty clear we're talking about Germania. Just to point out why I don't have a face cam, my wife is using my camera right now. That's pretty much it. So yeah, I don't have a face cam, but you can deal with it, it's fine. Germania, how about that? An often requested feature for Invictus is to fill the area around the Rhine with playable tags and add more flavour to Germania. In this Dev Diary, we're going to present you this as well as flavour for these newly added Germanics and the Swabian. So this is made by Palando, he's the main developer for Germania. He's thankfully every now and then supported by Oliver Kranz as well for the flavour texts. Apart from what he's going to present today, there's more content for other parts of Germania Magna planned, but not yet ready to show. So, the Rhine and Weser. The primary role of the Germania rework were the tribes east of the Rhenus, the Rhine. Roman writers handed us down a remarkably detailed setup for this region, together with some changes that happened during the control of the western side of the Rhine. Among these is the defeat of the Bructeri by the hands of the Chamavi and the Angrivari. The migration of the Usipetes and Tancteri during Caesar's Gallic War, and the split between the Batavians and the Chattians in some unknown time before, and the Chattians filling the void left by the Ubians after the latter's resettlement across the Rhine. It was a goal to reverse these movements to come close to the year 304 BCE, but we cannot for sure we can't know for sure what happened in this prehistoric time. I won't say it's prehistoric. Really just means like it's the time before we have written record for it, so I guess it kind of is, but it just feels a bit weird to say prehistoric. No idea. Archaeology points, though, towards no major migrations for the period preceding the Roman conquest of Gaul. Did the Roman conquest of Gaul spur on these migrations? Who knows? Probably not. Talking of which, the Rhine-Weser area was an extremely diverse one archaeologically. Some of the constants, together with the quite sparse written accounts, are going to make their way into the game via missions and events. At first, there'll be only one unique tree available, with the primary path leading to the formation of the Frankish kingdom. It'll ask you to unite your area, civilize and fight a common enemy. The tasks are modelled around the historical formation of the Franks, albeit that happened later in opposition to the frontier of the Roman Empire. Because Rome's rise is not certain, you can either wage war with the Romans or a Gaulish neighbour. The optional branch is mostly based on the archaeological record and demands to build mines, trade with your neighbours, and build a fortified trade post based on the Schnippenberg, and then finally impose a standard for your iron bars, granting you a permanent bonus. What permanent bonus that is, who knows? I can't exactly hover over and find out. After forming Francia, another tree is unlocked and is based on the early expansion of the Franks. There are several economic and conquest-related missions until the final row is reached. Completing the mission tree requires the player to choose which side of the Franks will dominate and set the focus of their country, either the Salians or, like in history, the Ripaurians. I've never heard of those, if I'm being honest. I've never heard of the Ripaurians. Heard of the Salians, never heard of the Ripaurians. Don't know why. Anyway. Extremely important Eburones. Across the Rhine, the Ciceronian Germanics were also looked upon. The biggest of these were the Eburones, which received the land they had according to Caesar and modern scholars. Additionally, 4 other small Ciceronic tribes were added: Paemenia, Segenia, Serosia, and Condrusia. This is such a hard word to pronounce, but You know, luckily for you, I pronounce it perfectly first time, so I mean, you know, we can just move on about that. Aduatucia was removed as Caesar mentioned their creation by some Cimbric migrants during the migration of the Cimbri, Teutones, and Ambrones. Also, Cugernia was removed as they were created when the Romans resettled a few Sugambrians. We have plans to add more content to Belgae, but they are not yet ready to be publicly shown. Now move on to the Celts of central Germany. Life was quite simple in ancient ethnography. West of the Rhine, Celts, with the exception of the Ciceronian Germanics, and east of the Rhine, only Germanic tribes. Archaeology paints here a somewhat different picture, as central and southern Germany were part of the Latène culture, which nowadays equaled to Celts by most scholars. By the time the Romans reached the Rhine, most of the Celts of those areas had already moved to Gaul, or were in the process of doing so. Among these were the Helvetii, which left behind the so-called Helvetian Desert in southwestern Germany, but it appears that the Swabian leader Ariovistus also had Celtic allies in his federation, although Caesar identified them all as Germanics. This can be deduced from the Celtic tribal names of the Nemetes and Tribochii, or Tribochi, I don't know, or the material culture and other names for the Vangiones, although the latter had a Germanic tribal name. The Suebi also threatened the Ubii, who can be identified as the inhabitants of the one Celtic oppidum, or city, based on archaeology. In sum, these four tribes were placed in the void between the Helvetii in the south and the Germanic north. Apart from the Ubii, however, there is some uncertainty as to where the Vangiones, Nemetes, and Tribochi originally came from. Tribochia is a thing in the game already. Yeah, Tribochia is there. I'm pretty sure that was in vanilla, right? There is a Tribochia in vanilla. I recognize the name. Quite clearly I recognize the name, but you know, it's yeah, it is what it is. The land these three own in the current setup was distributed between the Rauraci and the Mediomatri. Note these three inhabited Alsace only after Ariovistus crossed the River Rhine. Fair enough. So, on to the Suebi. As mentioned in the previous paragraphs, the Suebi started pushing westwards and across the Rhine, a welcome justification for Caesar to wage war upon them. Although Caesar won, the Suebi still permanently filled the void left by the Celts and left central Germany and the Bohemian Basin. The Marcomanni in Bohemia, the Quadi in Slovakia, and the Hermunduri in central Germany would threaten the Roman Empire in the 2nd century AD from those positions they'd already acquired in the second half of the 1st century BCE. The three aforementioned tribes were also added to the setup, respectively repositioned in the case of the Marcomanni. So yeah, there's a lot more going on in this region. There's a lot more going on. It's very much filled out. Whether that makes it easier or harder, I really couldn't say at this point. But it's certainly an interesting change. This Rudignia, this has been sort of like merged, because I know this is where like Frisia starts. And there's yeah, I feel like this has been a few different tribes merged together. I don't know. I'd have to check against the current setup, but I believe that is the case. Anyway, Swardonia and Neuethonia are additions of Invictus's release version. Swabian nations also receive unique flavour, like a decision to embellish their famous grave fields. The biggest of these was Mühlen-Eichen, close to the Baltic coast. Primarily, the mission trees are based on the setting of the Bohemian Basin and the fight between Ariovistus and Caesar. After forming Swabia, or alternatively starting as Marcomannia or Quadia, the player gets access to a mission tree to bring the Celtic reign in Bohemia to an end. This new home has to then be settled and defended against foes from the south. An optional task is to enslave the Cortini living in the Slovakian mountains, as they were known to the Romans as tributaries that delivered gold to their Swabian overlords. Historically, the timeline and events are not completely clear, but according to archaeology and the intrusion of the Suebi into Bohemia started already when Caesar campaigned in Gaul. So unlike most of the interpretations of Roman sources, it appears that Maroboduus was not the conqueror and destroyer of the Boii. Okay. The Cortinii were also added as a two-province minor in the Slovakian mountains, and they start out with access to gold. Right, there they are. But it's up to the player on how she or he will grow their domain, migrate, colonize, or perhaps something else. The second mission tree will be available again after forming Swabia, or by starting as the mighty Semnonia. The mandatory path starts with expelling the Usipetes and Tencteri and conquering a pathway through the Thuringian forest. Thereafter, you unlock a mission to generate a character with the Ariovistus cognomen, who can be made your new tribal chief, aiding you in completion of some further tasks. Then you have to bolster your ranks with allies, though the word implies that they are not equal, which is not the cause because of your Swabian superiority. I don't know why I tripped over those words, whatever. Crossing the Rhenus and securing land for your people on the western side of it will grant you access to a decision on how to deal with your allies. Caesar described Ariovistus as Rex Germanorum, the king of the Germans, though this title was most likely not hereditary and not uncontested at that time. But what if Ariovistus had defeated the Romans and carved out a kingdom for himself? It's up to the player what will happen by going down this optional path. Took the liberty to interpret the name Ariovistus as a cognomen, as some scholars view it as a Celtic name. Alright. I like this. This is pretty cool. Definitely, you know, there's a line to be drawn between, you know, oh, everything has to be 100% historical, and then there's also a line that has to be drawn in another area that is things that happened after the start of the game should absolutely be forced and railroaded into happening. And then there's, like, a third line that is along the lines of this outcome had potential, or this could have happened if a different battle had gone a different way or something like that, then this may have happened. And if that may have happened leads to something that would be fun for people to play in the game, then I see absolutely no problem with going down that route. I see this in the same way. This, you know, having a king of the Germans actually become that and consolidate the Germans and then start fighting the Romans and stuff, it may have come to pass if circumstances were slightly different. And, you know, it sounds like a bit of fun, so why not? Finally, lovers of unique coat of arms, which is me, will surely enjoy Turugu's coat of arms for Langobardia, which is based on the Langobardian myth that they got their name, Longbeards, from Odin himself. This is a cool as fuck flag. I'm a big fan of it. So, complete overview of the new setup for the area around the Rhine and Swabia. Very nice indeed. And then for reference, we have a very low quality old map. Why is this in like 480p or 360p or some shit? That's terrible. But I was correct. Frisia is now over here, whereas in the current setup they're right there. And Rudignia has Chaucia has moved into Frisia. Rudignia has moved from, I think that's Rudignia, and they've moved to Chaucia. Anglia has lost a bit of land. Varinia has lost its south. Langobardia has been split up. Focia is different. I mean, I've got no problem with it all being different. I'm just trying to point out the differences, you know. But I'm happy with it. It's looking good. And then a teaser for next week is, clearly we're going with the Eye of Sauron and the Lord of the Rings update, clearly. But yeah, second part of the Germania overhaul. I'm looking forward to more of it. Absolutely. It's a short dev diary. There's not too terribly much there. I don't play often in Germany. It is something I do want to change. I would like to, you know, try a campaign there at some point in the not too distant future. But yeah, it's definitely one of the lesser played areas. So, like, there's two ways you can think of that, right? Is it lesser played, and therefore shouldn't be bothered with? Like, oh, people don't play there. Why would we update it? Or is it lesser played because there's not enough flavor to be, you know, for it to be worth playing there, and therefore is adding flavor to it a good thing? It's pretty much the exact same problem as, I think you've all seen the image of the World War II fighter plane with all the red dots, and it's like, oh yeah, all the planes that came back had damage in these areas, therefore we need to put armor plating there. It's basically the same problem. Survivor bias or some shit like that. But yeah, it's basically like that. So adding more flavor to Germany because it's lesser played may be a good thing, because that maybe would encourage people to play it, and, you know, more variety in the game, which is exactly what Imperator Invictus is all about. It's all about adding variety, and, you know, I'm all about that. I would like to know what you guys think, though. Before I end off, I just want to say, yes, I have stopped playing in the Imperator Invictus Dev Clash on Sundays. That's mostly for my own peace of mind. I had too many multiplayers going on at the same time, and it was getting a little bit stressful, and I just needed to take a step back. So I have dropped out of that, though I will continue to have a watch of the Observer VODs, and if there's something interesting that happens, I'll make a video on it perhaps. But yeah, I'm no longer involved in that. Yeah, that's kind of all the news on that, I guess. I would like to know your thoughts on the new setup in Germany. Do you like this? Do you like that there is more countries here? Do you think it's going to make it easier or more difficult to play in Germany? And are you planning on playing in Germany with this new change? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section below, so please do leave them down there. But until next time, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Turtles.